Mikey P. Mike Bobosi back in the Money Players podcast. Special week. Saratoga has the Belmont week again this year. We got New York Showcase Day on Wednesday to kick off the week. And our man covering NYRA, typically for InTheMoneyPodcast.com, is Nick Tamero. Nick, definitely my favorite handicapper on earth. Glad to have you in. The New York Thoroughbred Breeders like to sponsor us for some of these shows, these New York Showcase days. These are usually pretty fun days. Lots of stakes to look at.
Yeah, for sure. Great to join you, Mikey, as always. And I think these days speak to the quality of the New York bred program. It's really grown in prominence, deservedly so, over the years. And, you know, we've seen New York breds compete well against open company. And obviously when they get together, these races end up being a convergence of horses with all kinds of good form, graded stake caliber horses. So yeah, we're not dealing with, I suppose we could say at this point, our father's New York bred program. We're dealing with one that's quite a bit better and quite a bit more accomplished.
Absolutely. And these horses, hard knockers, can jump into open company, like you said, can jump into open graded stakes company. Spirit of St. Louis is a great example that you'll see him in an open stake. Later on, he's already won 2 grade ones this year. So hard to fault that for those type of New York bred horses that can go anywhere and win the big pots. Well, lots of stakes to look at here for the Wednesday Saratoga card. Nick, race 2 starts these New York stakes, and the Mike Lee goes 7 furlongs. It's straight 3-year-olds here. A couple nice horses in this race. I do think they're going to be going quick early. How are we going to kick it off today?
Yeah, so the big adjustment that we'll have to make here from a handicapping perspective is the 6 Moplex is going to come out of this race because of the equine quarantine with regards to the herpes virus that's going on in Jeremiah Englehart's barn. So he'll come out, which obviously will not only affect the pace scenario, it'll affect the betting quite a bit. But I like a horse enough to the point where I would have liked him, I think, with or without Moplex in there. I like the 3 Calling Card, who is interesting enough to me at the price he's going to be for me to try it. So this horse hasn't run against New York breds on dirt since November of 24, and that was a race that he won by over 17 lengths. And he's danced some dances against much better horses since. He tried the Lecomte, they tried the Gotham, they tried the Jeff Ruby Stakes, they've tried him on turf, dirt, synthetic. They've done a little bit of everything. And, you know, it's the first time and only the second time in his life, Mikey, that he's gone 1 turn on dirt. And I think that's exactly what he wants. So I love the surface switch, the cutback, all of that. I think we're going to get some pace on in here between the 3 Prince Valiant and the 5 Train the Trainer. But Rob Atras actually has very good numbers moving horses off of Lasix in stake situations on dirt. So I'm not thinking that Train the Trainer is out of the question. I don't necessarily love taking horses that won on wet tracks back on dry surfaces. I actually like him a little bit better than Prince Valiant. And I also think you have to give some consideration to the one soon to be king who was compromised by that slow pace last out that Prince Valiant just sort of danced along setting. But it'll be Calling Card for me on the top end.
Yeah, I like similar horses. I do think Calling Card rates a chance, especially you got that 8-1 morning line. Now he's not going to be 8-1 now, especially with the 6 coming out of this race, but he certainly deserves a shot. I do think, like you said, he gets back to probably what he wants to do, and that's 1 turn sprinting. It has some class to him, and he's an interesting type. I like Prince Valiant. I mean, I like Pletcher. I think that this horse is improving. 3 straight wins. Probably can win with, I think, an off the pace type trip. If he has to, the 6 coming out of this race, I don't think helps him as much. I guess we'll see what Train the Trainer is here, and has to come off Lasix now, and is speedy. Probably has to improve to beat these horses. So I was heavy 3-2. I could see the 1 if he gets a setup, but he seems to need every step of the stretch when he does get up. He wins by an inch. He needs things to go his way, and I'm not sure that he's going to beat all of these horses. So maybe more like an underneath type for me to kick off this New York bred stakes card here on Wednesday at Saratoga. Let's go to race number 4, and it's the Commentator Mount an Eighth. And Nick, Commentator certainly knew his way around Saratoga, especially going a Mount an Eighth on the front end there. So a very aptly named stake here. Who do you like?
Yeah, commentator St. Liam Whitney, one of the best races of the last of this century, I would say. So I'm going to try and wake up an old favorite in the New York bred ranks, the 5 Drake's Passage. This horse has a really interesting thoroughgraph pattern. It looks like he's cycling towards another big effort. You know, the Drake's Passage of a year ago would bury this field when he did exactly that in the commentator, winning at 9-10 by 4 lengths, wiring the field. He's now finds himself in a situation where he's trying to prove he's still a racehorse. And his bad run was started really in a 2 other than here at Saratoga on a wet track where he had run poorly. And, you know, you want to chalk it up to maybe he's not a wet track horse, but he had just won the commentator for fun. And maybe he's a horse that doesn't love Saratoga, but he had just won the commentator for fun. So it's a little disconcerting. He came back with a poor effort in the Empire Classic. They shelved him. And last time out, he showed some life, which I think is a good thing. He's now switching off Lasix, obviously, as he moves up in class. I'm not as concerned about that, given how well he's run without Lasix in the past. And he was 3 to 4 wide the whole way last out. Manny Franco seemed pretty intent on getting him off the rail. And that was a day where you actually wanted to be on the rail. So that whole Derby weekend, while we were living it up at Churchill Downs, the main track at Aqueduct was pretty speed favoring, pretty inside favoring. And I think Drake's Passage really took the worst of it. The horse to beat is the 8 Bank Frenzy. But my issue with Bank Frenzy is I've always felt like he was better at a mile than a mile and an eighth. And I think a mile and an eighth is really pushing the limits of his distance desires, if you will. So I think he's a horse that's a little bit vulnerable based on that 9th furlong. That was enough for me to take a little swing against him. I don't have an argument with the 1 Mama's Gold either. I think Mama's Gold finds his way into a much more winnable spot after trying the Excelsior last out. He set a rapid fire pace and gave way with about 4 furlongs to go. I think he's going to set a much softer pace on the lead in here. This is a horse who wired the field in a shock at 40 to 1 in the Empire Classic last fall. They have only one way to go, right? It's a front-running gambit for him every time. We'll see how far he can take him. So as far as a multi-race play goes, I would just be on the 1, 5, and 8 and maybe press the 5 a little bit.
Yeah, and a big week for Miguel Clement, obviously, with everything with Christoph passing. And, the PTF did a really nice tribute show. You guys can find that on the network if you're interested. I do think he has quite a few horses this week, and I'm hoping that he does do well. I was on Mama's Gold just for the distance alone. I do think that this one is capable of big efforts, and those mile and eighth races have been this horse's biggest efforts. And if you look back to last year, and maybe he just got really good, but wired that field at Aqueduct in the Empire Classic at 40 to 1, backed it up with a nice win on December 12th there, going that same distance with those big buyer numbers. Now, the last race was not good, but I definitely much tougher spots, and I do think that he will be in front. So I'm interested in him in this race. I'm curious to see the price. And you mentioned you don't like Bank Frenzy. What sort of trip do you think he gets in here, Nick? 75 morning line. I'd imagine he'll be trying to be right off of it, but maybe the 1 and the 8 take each other out here. That could certainly turn this race on its head.
Yeah, I mean, the reinvented Bank Frenzy is a horse that comes from a little bit off of it. So I would imagine a trip probably similar to what they had in the Stymie, where he sat a little bit off of it and pounced kind of around the turn. It's a little trickier at a mile and an eighth than it is at a mile, just because you in a naturally slower paced race, you've got to time your move well. And putting a charge into a horse like Mama's Gold is not always the easiest thing to do, especially if Mama's Gold is really dictating terms on the front end. So I would imagine he'll be out there on a 2-3 wide chase. I guess where Saez puts Drake's Passage will probably dictate how far off the rail Bank Frenzy is. There's really only one horse with any other legitimate amount of speed, and that's the 7 General Banker, who showed more speed last out a mile and an eighth. Now, he's really a horse that wants to go shorter, but there just aren't a whole lot of options for New York breds this week, older males outside of going 2 turns. So I would envision that probably an outside stalking trip. And, I think if Mama's Gold is not quite himself again, this is the horse that picks up the baton when he checks out. And that would obviously make Bank Frenzy very tough.
Yeah, I thought Lock and Key just had a little bit of a look in there also. 8 to 1 morning line. Now, can go short, can go longer. It has some turf lines where this horse raced well at a mile and 8. So I thought an interesting type horse, especially from off the pace, is 2 for 2 over the racetrack also. So that's something to be, to consider. Just a long shot that I thought maybe, what some of these favorites are a little tricky in here. Just one that I thought maybe could upset.
Yeah, he's kind of a funny horse, Mikey, in that on turf, he went long really effectively. I mean, he was very solid. He was earning buyer speed figures in the mid to upper 80s. And then Jimmy Ryerson moved him to the dirt, and he immediately shortened him up. And it looks like he got better, but, he really didn't get that much better. He was a pretty damn good horse on the turf. So I think the distance worries really aren't too substantial. He was really grinding it out last out in the Haynesfield, going a mile. He probably needs to be a little bit more engaged, because I don't really think he's got that kind of kick that's going to get him past 4 or 5 horses in the final half mile. So hopefully Lane is able to get him to a good, comfortable spot, a little bit off of it. I mean, I picked him 4th. I think the top 3 are really the 3, but this is clearly, to me, the 4th horse. And if for some reason one of those 3 doesn't win, it'll almost certainly be him.
Move on to race number 6. Starts at the late pick 5 for Wednesday. Another straight 3-year-old. This is for the fillies this time, going 7 furlongs. Nick, pretty wide open race again. K-Cup 9-5 morning line, coming off a big win in the maiden ranks. You get Irad here again. You think this one is deserving of this low morning line? You're the morning line guy, so always good to get your opinion here.
Well, and David Aragona, the morning line maker in New York, is the best morning line maker in the game. I think David may have been a little bit aggressive with this horse. I don't quite know if she dips below 2-1. Obviously, there's a big IRAD tax that anybody who bets his horses has to pay. I think the 5 accelerating is going off shorter than 5-1 here. I don't think this horse is going off 5-1. I mean, she's been more than 5-1 once in her career, and it was in an 11-horse race at Oaklawn off of a career worst performance. But you look at this race on paper, Mikey, and you realize, like, the 5's really loose on paper. I mean, she's a lot faster than these horses early. And if you go back to what kind of got her on the map last year, it was by just blitzing to the lead. And with all due respect to the Asmussen brothers, who ride regularly for their dad, there's usually an advantage to betting those horses when they get a jockey change. So it's Steve has used both of them successfully, but he's used Jose Ortiz very successfully as well. So I think accelerating is a horse that's going to improve quite a bit here. I thought Keith was doing the right thing in the Purple Martin, trying to get her through on the inside to force the pace, and they just shut the door on him a little bit, and she did not react well to it. She immediately, as the comment indicates, lost action 5/8. I mean, she dropped about 4 lengths in the blink of an eye, and that completely ended her race. I don't love that she didn't really do any running last time out at all. However, I think it's a situation where horses like Moto and Indy Bay are very solid allowance types in the 3-year-old filly sprinting ranks already. I think this is a very lateral class move, if not even a little bit of a drop. And I'm not really taken by K-Cup. I don't need to go out of my way to make some big bet on K-Cup. I'll tell you this much: switching off Lasix on dirt in the last 5 years for Jorge Abreu is 1 for 16 with a 78-cent ROI. So it's not a good number. We're going to see a lot of these numbers come into play on this card and throughout the weekend. I think accelerating wires this field, Mikey.
Yeah, she looks good, and 2 for 2 over the racetrack. And that's not to be, I think, underestimated, because some horses do love it up here, do love this track. And, right, we see it a lot. The horses that excel over this track, and you mentioned the jockey change. Lots of buzz on Twitter about the Asmussen riding colony recently. Also, if people are paying attention to that, I do think that Jose Ortiz is one of the top riders in the country. He's certainly having a career-type year. And he moves horses up. So speedy, likes the track. Lots to like about the 5 accelerating. I thought the 6 was interesting also. Valentinia. This one, 9-2 morning line. 2 straight wins in the 1X, then cleared the 2X. Going a mile, this horse shortens up just a little bit. But I do think that this horse plays well. Another one that has a win over this track, going 7 furlongs, has danced a few dances in the New York Stakes circuit. So I do think this one has to come off Lasix. That's a bit of an issue, but does fit versus these horses and probably gets the right trip in here. Looks just as fast as the 5 and the 6, the 5 and the 7. I think another one that is probably a little bit interesting.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I think probably benefits the most if there's any pace on. And she just had the misfortune last year of running into With the Angels 3 times in a row, who was razor sharp as a 2-year-old, who broke her maiden very impressively first out at Saratoga and then rattled off 3 straight stakes wins. Unfortunately, has not been back to the races since, but obviously is a horse that would have spiced this race up. So hopefully we get her back in the near future. But no, I agree. I mean, the only other horse I would mention, we talked a little bit about K-Cup. The 2 Bernie in the Rose has been very good, really, throughout her career, especially in these 4 straight wins. She won the Eastview from coming a little bit off the pace, and then won the Maddie May stalking the pace. So she's got a lot of versatility to her. And if you're a Thorograph player, she has a massive edge on everybody in terms of Thorograph figures. She got a 6 last out in the Maddie May. my top pick Accelerating got 2 9s as a 2-year-old. So you would think that if she takes a forward move off of that, she could really get into that single digit range again, which would make her pretty tough to beat. But I wanted to at least throw a little attention the way of Bernie and the Rose.
Absolutely. Let's go to race 7, and it's the Kingston 200,000 here. This is the Turf Melon Turf course here, and going for 200,000. And I was looking at a single in this race here, and find it. Let's see. It's the one, actually. It's all coming together. I love the name, and really like the horse, racing very well versus open foes. Just missed in a 2x at Gulfstream back in March. Lost to Sherlock Shoal, who's a very nice horse that came back to repeat off of that race in a race up here. Now, was 19-1 in that race at Gulfstream. Showed up here and was 5-1 in a condition allowance race with Pratt and was able to win for McGahee. So. And that was a pretty nice field that one faced there. I just think that this is a drop. You get an inside post, should get the right trip, can win up close, can win a little bit off the pace, has a win over the Saratoga course. So lots to like for me. It's all coming together. Nick, who do you like?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the 2 horses to beat in here are the 1 and 9. With that said, I have kind of a bear with me horse, and let me make my case. I picked the 7 Ruse. So Ruse is a horse that I've liked throughout his career. He's been in a series of spots that were a little too tough for him for a variety of different reasons. I encourage anybody that's watching this to either take my word for it or go look yourself. The ride this horse got in the Appleton last time out was absolutely comical. I mean, he broke from the middle of the pack. It was almost as if Jorge Ruiz was dying to get to the outside fence as quickly as he could. He's 4 to 5 paths wide the entire way. He actually puts in a nice little run, and it's nearly impossible to watch turf races on these big days at Gulfstream because they switch camera angles multiple times, but they actually go to the drone shot on the backstretch, and you see him kind of take a little bit of a hip check halfway down the backstretch and bear out a little bit from there. This is a horse that ran much better than it looks on paper. I know it doesn't look like he did much running at all. He did do a pretty substantial amount of running in the middle of that race. It was the running line belies the quality of the performance overall. I understand the concern here is how does he work out a trip to win? There's a lot of speed signed on. Kendrick Carmouche is going to have to get him comfortable a little bit off the pace, but this horse is going to be a massive price. And so I have to try him at that kind of number off of that effort. Mainly also, Mikey, because outside of the 1 and 9, I can't really get too energized about anyone in here, right? I mean, Clear Conscience, Better Lucky Than Good, Gem Mint 10, Union Trail. Those are all Bee of Courage. They're all like slightly differing versions of the same horse. They're hard-knocking New York breds that are out of conditions, that are running in stakes races because they really don't have any other option. And the only other horse in the race besides that is Shlomo. And he has no turf pedigree whatsoever. So, I mean, I'm not interested in him. He is a Freud, yes, but the damn side is all dirt. So that was kind of also part of the reason why I wanted to go to Ruse, who, I think on his best day can win a race like this. And obviously we're going to be looking at 20 to 1 plus.
Yeah, I get the 9 also that you mentioned. Face Mercanti 2 back. I just, the turf lines here just don't impress me quite as much as the synthetic lines. And it's an outside post. It's Pratt. It's Cox. It's going to take a ton of money. I just thought the 1 might get a better trip. I could see your 7 though, especially given what you said there. If you look back at some of this horse's lines, been in some tough spots against some tough horses. Certainly. As a player, I think in here, and it's 20 to 1 morning line, so it's going to play huge in Maltese, really huge everywhere. If you can get this horse on the ticket somewhere, it's certainly going to pay a ton. So I like that look, and I like that race. Actually, I do think that there are a couple that you can latch onto. Race number 7 on Wednesday. Race 8 is the Critical Eye. This is 3 and up, going a mile and an eighth here, back to the dirt course. Nick, who'd you like?
I got to tell you, buddy, I tried, and there's nothing I can say about anybody but D8 Sterling Silver. I mean, she is just 100% supposed to win this race. I understand that distance-wise, she's better going shorter than this. She's so much better than these horses, Mikey. It's not even close. It is going to take something drastically weaker than what we've seen from her and something somewhat drastically better than what we've seen from the balance of this field in order for her to lose. I know she missed by a nose in the Empire Distaff last fall. Venti Valentine is a real route horse. I mean, she's a horse that had done well, not only going a mile, but had definitely run well going a mile and an eighth also. So I think Sterling Silver's just going to beat these horses. She probably should have won last time out in the roughie, and she got a little shuffled out around the turn and still put in a really nice bid. You know, the biggest threat to her is probably a horse like the 9, Bernie Takes Charge, trying to wire the field, but there's other speed in here, and Bernie Takes Charge has got to try and clear from all the way out there. I think Junior just settles Sterling Silver into a comfortable rhythm, a few lengths off the pace, and she just sort of wears him down around the turn and into the stretch.
Agree on the 8. One horse that I did see that might not be able to win this race, but I thought was a little bit interesting was the 3, Call Her Bluff. Was claimed a couple back, and that was a pretty bad line there, but improved off of that race on May the 15th. If you look back, when Pratt has ridden this horse a couple times, got a couple wins, and did win over the Saratoga course last year. Now, that was going a mile, but in a sloppy track, I don't think that they're expecting rain. This horse certainly would move up over the slop. But just interesting that Pratt shows back up over this horse. Got second back off the claim for a barn that's sharp enough, and I thought could maybe spice up the exotics a little bit. But as far as playing Maltese with Sterling Silver, Nick, would you just be single code A, like no backups to this one, that much of a believer?
I mean, I'd probably be hard-pressed to do anything more than maybe using the 9 once as a C. My goofy intra-race idea is I'm going to play a try with Racing Colors, the 1 and 3rd. And I might play a little exacta with her underneath Sterling Silver. She's a plodding one-run slowpoke that there's a lot of suspect speed in here. And she actually ran fine in the Turn Back the Alarm without Lasix last fall. So I'm going to give her a chance to just kind of suck up along the rail and maybe get a piece of it. But yeah, in the Maltese, it'll just be the 8 for me. Maybe a little 1 ticket, 150-cent ticket with the 9.
Race 9, back to the grass. We're on the inner turf now, the Mount Vernon 4-year-olds and up for the fillies and mares. Nick, this is a pretty nice race. I thought very wide open. I was leaning towards the 5, Awesome Check. Just really liked this horse and got good up here last year. A couple nice wins over the turf course at this New York bred level. Now, if you look since then, all open races. No wins since then, but I think likes the track, likes this company, perfectly drawn. You mentioned a lot of these turf horses look the same. So I was interested in Awesome Check. What say you?
Yeah, I think she's the horse to beat, Mike. Yeah, I won't lie. Horacio de Paz 0 for 13, switching off Lasix on turf. Relatively small sample. He's got some horses that ran in the money in there, so I don't think it matters. Also, don't really know how many stakes horses Horacio de Paz has, so I don't really want to hold that against him, and I did not write down what they were odds-wise. That does give you a little bit more insight. I picked the 10, What Love Looks Like. I think this horse will end up going off favored. I don't see Silver Skillet going off a shorter price than her, especially given that What Love Looks Like was favored in the Ticonderoga last year. What Love Looks Like is coming out of a series of grade 3 races, all run at marathon distances. I think she made it clear last year she's better going shorter. And, you know, this is something I usually overlook or don't really consider. I'm wondering if IRAD could make a difference for this mare. She seems to be the type that wants to sit a little bit off the pace. Nobody times up races better on the grass than IRAD. So I'm wondering if he might be the X factor here. Her best races are better than most of these horses' best races. And I just can't, if I knew that the Silver Skillet that we saw early in 24 was still around, I would give her more consideration. But I don't love the way they seem to have lost their way with regards to where she's supposed to be early. She's not really getting the lead anyway with Spinning Colors on her outside. So I agree. I picked a 10-5-1. I'd certainly be I'd be fine with Awesome Check getting it done too, who's already a New York bred stake winner and came back with a good effort last out. I mean, while Scarlet Poppy saved ground and angled out and was able to get a split in front of her, she covered all the ground around the turn last time and still ended up finishing with a lot of energy. So I thought she ran fine in there, and I would give her every opportunity to be dangerous right back on the class jump.
We're going to cover the last race also, just to cut the late pick 5 here. And it's race 10, State Bred Maiden Specials. Nick, we're going back to the Mellon Turf. How are we going to get paid?
Yeah, open company to New York bred company, always an angle. I went to the 1 Sir Oscar for Graham Motion, a new gelding coming out of a debut or a turf debut where I thought he ran well. He got an inside trip. I know saving ground is usually of great importance at Tampa, and Sammy Camacho gave this horse a very good ride. but I think he still has plenty of upside. Comes back off a little bit of a break for Graham Motion, and should probably save ground throughout in here. So I ended up landing on him. I will admit, Mikey, it's a tough race. I mean, there's a lot of contention in here. I thought the 10 Mission Hill could run better. I don't love the layoff numbers for Dave Duggan, and this is a horse who really showed no courage whatsoever in the stretch of his last couple starts, including a race that kicked off Belmont Week last year. The 11 Sir Lawrence, who Larry Goichman clearly named for himself, is a homebred out of Geray who won nearly $1 million, was a multiple graded stake winner on turf. She has dropped 3 turf winners from 8 to try it, but those 3 were all good. And one of them was a New York bred stake horse. I also wanted to mention the 4 Coach Case, who David made the favorite on the morning line. I don't really love this horse's debut. I thought he ran fine. I don't really think he ran well enough to be favored in here. I think the one's going to take a lot of money too, but I'd use every bit of the 1, 4, 10, and 11 to close it out.
I will mention one horse you didn't, and that's the 5 Spirit of the Law, and it's Barclay Tag at Saratoga. Always a name that I'm interested in. It's Saratoga Stables, another name that certainly targets this meet. And this one, just looking at that January 18th race at Gulfstream over Synthetic, faced some toughies in there. King of Ashes, Tomasello, both came out of that race to really race very well. And both ended up in a stake at Churchill over this past weekend and raced very well. I think that was a pretty tough race. Now you get the grass, you get Barclay at Saratoga, 6-1 morning line working pretty well up here. I think they've been looking at this for a little while now. So back to New York Bred Company, you get the turf. The Tisla Laws have been okay over the grass. I do think that, it has 20% winners, 18% turf route winners so far. So
32% first time turf too.
Yeah. So, there's things to like, I think, about this horse in a race that is certainly very wide open to finish out the card. And there's also a John Ortiz first timer. So I can never resist those on the 7. Nick, New York bred showcase day, New York thoroughbred breeders, always very much a friend of the network. Nice to see these New York breds get showcased and get the proper treatment to open up this Saratoga meet. Belmont week is upon us.
Very much looking forward to it, Mikey. We'll have a lot of coverage on the network and obviously at InTheMoneyPodcast.com. Again, a big thanks to New York Thoroughbred Breeders, our friend Naja Thompson, who is the executive director. We'll look for Naj tomorrow to be presenting some trophies for sure.
Yeah, appreciate Naj. Appreciate everyone for watching this. It's been a production of In the Money Media. If you're listening on the audio side, stay tuned. We have some more on this audio pod. We're going to have some Indiana Downs for you. So check that out. Until then, enjoy Belmont week. I know all of us are going to have a lot of fun. We'll see you next time.